The palace thought Sophie would quietly guide Meghan into royal life, but according to explosive claims swirling behind those royal walls, what actually happened may have turned into one of the coldest silent feuds the monarchy has ever seen. And the shocking part? Sophie never screamed, never publicly attacked Meghan, never sat down for a revenge interview. Instead, she allegedly destroyed the entire narrative with silence, icy stares, and a few razor-sharp sentences that royal watchers are still dissecting years later.
Prince Edward's wife and Queen Elizabeth's daughter-in-law, Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, publicly broke her silence on the
royal secret weapon. I think secret weapon is an excellent way to put it because a lot of our viewers may not be as...
She's tense. She's got also her jaw tense at that moment. Besides...
Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, is a prominent member of the British royal family who has garnered respect and...
Question about stepping in for Meghan Markle. What she said next left everyone stunned, and the palace has been buzzing ever since.
This was something that Sophie knew only too well. Although she was never likely to be queen, she was the daughter of a tyre salesman, navigated an almost impossible path to become among the most trusted members of the firm. And what lessons other royals...
But to really appreciate each and every single body language interaction, we have to dig deeper to understand.
The 55-year-old noted that her experience of marrying into the royal family was much different than Meghan's.
And I have huge compassion for that.
Hold up. There's
several conversations.
There's a conversation.
In the chat shows, there's no reason why you should know who she is. Certainly not in this country anyway. In case anyone needs a refresher on her...
This is not the same. And if a member of his family will comfortably say, we've all had to deal with things that are rude.
He's done, other than fight for his country. So, of course, the royalty would support her.
Chris, isn't she?
She could have been our queen, Justin.
Oh, mate, what's the point?
Things have not gone according to plan, but nonetheless, what did they want? What did they actually think was going on?
How do you explain that you bow to your grandmother and that you will need to curtsy, especially to an American?
Myers, she's exceptionally discreet. She's always dependable. We spoke with Joe Little of Majesty Magazine. He said,
I'm not a fan, I've told you many times, I'm not a fan of analyzing pictures, but this is the kind of pictures that tell our...
I was even staying in Buckingham Palace. Not that you necessarily know how it will pan out.
When Meghan Markle first entered the royal family beside Prince Harry, the world treated it like a modern fairy tale exploding in real time. Cameras followed every move. Headlines obsessed over every outfit, every smile, every tiny gesture. The palace tried to project perfection, but according to insiders and longtime royal observers, behind those polished palace doors, tension was already quietly building. And Queen Elizabeth reportedly saw it before almost anyone else did. She understood something crucial. Meghan was walking into one of the most rigid institutions on earth, filled with invisible rules nobody fully explains until you break them publicly. So the Queen made a deeply deliberate decision. She chose one person inside the royal family to help Meghan survive it all. Not Charles, not William, not Anne, Sophie. And that decision alone says everything. Because Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, had lived that nightmare already. She entered the royal family as an outsider. She knew the pressure, she knew the humiliation, she knew what it felt like to stumble publicly while the press ripped you apart. And Sophie had already endured scandals, media traps, and years of brutal adjustment before slowly becoming one of the most respected and trusted women in the monarchy. She earned that reputation the hard way, quietly, patiently, without demanding sympathy from the world. That is exactly why the Queen trusted her to guide Meghan through the storm. And Sophie reportedly took that responsibility seriously. Not in some cold royal protocol way either. According to reports, she personally went to Meghan's home. No giant palace setup, no assistants hovering around, no staged photo opportunity, just Sophie showing up as a real person trying to help another woman survive royal life. She stayed for hours, explaining private palace realities most outsiders never learn until it is too late. She allegedly answered every uncomfortable question Meghan had. She even gave Meghan her private phone number and reportedly told her to reach out anytime, day or night, if she needed help. Think about how personal that is for someone as guarded as Sophie. That was not duty anymore. That was genuine effort. Genuine emotional investment. But then something happened that allegedly changed everything forever. Silence. Total silence. According to reports repeated throughout royal circles, Meghan never called, never texted, never followed up. Sophie reportedly reached out multiple times afterward trying to keep the connection alive and allegedly kept getting nothing back. No interest, no response, nothing. And eventually, royal watchers started asking a brutal question nobody wanted to say publicly at the time. Did Meghan actually want help? Or had she already decided the institution itself was the enemy? Because when the Queen's personally chosen mentor repeatedly offers support and gets shut out every single time, that stops looking accidental. It starts looking deliberate. Then came the moment many royal fans still talk about to this day, Commonwealth Day 2020. Meghan and Harry's final major royal appearance before the entire royal structure exploded apart. And according to countless body language analyses afterward, Sophie's demeanor toward Meghan looked completely transformed. Gone was the warmth people associated with her. Reports described her posture as stiff, her expressions distant, her eyes intentionally avoiding Meghan. Then came that stare. The moment royal internet detectives replayed endlessly. Sophie reportedly locked eyes with Meghan in complete silence and did not look away. No smile, no softness, just a cold, steady gaze that many interpreted as years of frustration compressed into one chilling second. And according to observers, Meghan immediately looked downward afterward as her smile faded. No words were exchanged. None were needed. What made it even more explosive was what happened later during the exit procession. Royal exits follow strict protocol. Everyone knows where they stand. But Meghan reportedly crossed through chairs to position herself elsewhere beside William and Catherine rather than remain near Sophie and Edward. That tiny movement became massive fuel for speculation because by then, people were no longer seeing isolated awkward moments. They were seeing a pattern, a fracture, a silent royal war happening right in front of cameras while nobody officially acknowledged it. And then Oprah happened. The interview detonated across the entire world like a royal nuclear bomb. Accusations, betrayal, racism claims, emotional breakdowns, millions watching globally. Everyone waited for the royal family to respond. Most expected stiff diplomatic statements. Instead, Sophie and Edward delivered what became one of the most savage, quiet responses in royal history. When asked about the Oprah interview, Edward reportedly smirked and said, "Oprah who?" Sophie added, "What interview? 4 words. That was it." But those 4 words hit harder than entire public relations campaigns, because underneath the humor was something devastatingly calculated. Meghan had once insisted she barely knew anything about the royal family before marrying Harry. Sophie allegedly mirrored that same narrative right back by pretending not to know Oprah. The symmetry was almost surgical, but Sophie's sharpest move was still coming, and the terrifying thing about it was how polite it sounded on the surface. Because after the Oprah interview turned the monarchy upside down, reporters kept pressing senior royals for reactions. Most people expected vague palace-style answers carefully designed to avoid controversy. Instead, Sophie calmly delivered a sentence that many royal insiders believe quietly demolished Meghan's entire public narrative without ever sounding aggressive. Sophie simply said, "We all tried to help." 4 soft words. That was all. But underneath that calm delivery sat a direct contradiction to everything Meghan had just told the world. Because remember what Meghan claimed during that Oprah interview. She painted a picture of complete isolation, no support, no guidance, nobody helping her survive the institution. But according to reports surrounding Sophie's mentorship attempts, the reality behind palace walls allegedly looked very different. Sophie personally visited Meghan, stayed for hours, offered private guidance, shared her own painful experiences, gave Meghan direct access to her personal phone number, reached out repeatedly afterward. And according to royal sources, those offers allegedly kept getting rejected. Quietly, repeatedly, consistently. So when Sophie said we all tried to help, it landed like a dagger wrapped inside velvet, because she was not yelling, she was not defending herself emotionally. She was simply placing another version of events onto the public record and letting people decide which story sounded more believable. And over time, more and more people started paying attention to the gap between those 2 narratives. On one side, Meghan describing abandonment and emotional isolation. On the other side, multiple reports claiming support systems were actually offered behind the scenes, including mentorship and even mental health resources. Sophie never directly attacked Meghan over any of it. That is what made her approach so devastating. She let restraint become the weapon. Every tiny comment felt measured. Every sentence sounded composed. But underneath the elegance sat years of visible disappointment, and people watching closely could feel it. Then the story reached its final transformation. Quietly, symbolically, permanently. Sophie became the Duchess of Edinburgh. Now, to casual royal watchers, that may have looked like just another title adjustment inside the monarchy. But inside royal history, that title carries enormous weight. It is one of the most respected and historically significant positions in the institution, a title connected deeply to Queen Elizabeth's legacy itself. And when Sophie received it, many people felt the symbolism was impossible to ignore. Meghan remained the Duchess of Sussex, publicly criticizing the monarchy from abroad, while Sophie, the woman who stayed loyal, stayed silent, and stayed working, was elevated higher inside the institution than ever before. But then came the detail that truly sent royal gossip circles into meltdown. Reports emerged claiming Sophie felt genuinely relieved after Meghan stepped away from senior royal duties because she no longer had to curtsy to her. And that is where the entire story suddenly felt darker than people first realized. Because Sophie is not known as emotional, she is not impulsive, she does not publicly lose control. This is a woman famous for composure, famous for discipline, famous for quietly enduring decades of royal pressure without creating chaos around herself. So if relief was reportedly her genuine reaction after everything collapsed between Meghan and the monarchy, then people immediately began asking themselves one chilling question: just how bad had things become privately behind palace walls? Because according to reports, it was not merely about protocol anymore, it was about principle. Sophie allegedly struggled with the idea of bowing to someone who had publicly attacked the institution she dedicated her entire adult life to serving. Day after day, year after year, quietly carrying out engagements, supporting charities, representing the crown without demanding constant applause or emotional validation. That contrast became impossible for royal loyalists to ignore. Sophie represented endurance, Meghan represented rebellion, and suddenly those two women who initially seemed to share so much in common had become symbolic opposites inside the public imagination. And what makes this entire saga feel almost cinematic is the way Sophie handled every single stage of it without ever giving the world the explosive confrontation many expected. No emotional television special, no revenge memoir, no dramatic leaks filled with screaming palace fights. Instead, Sophie allegedly fought this entire war using body language, timing, silence, and precision. One stare at Commonwealth Day became global discussion. One Oprah who joke became royal legend. One we tried to help sentence became a permanent challenge to Meghan's version of events. Sophie never needed to dominate the headlines because somehow, despite barely speaking publicly at all, people still heard her louder and louder over time. And maybe that is the most shocking part of this entire story. Meghan desperately wanted the world to hear her pain, and they did. Millions listened, millions sympathized, millions debated every word. But hearing someone and fully believing them are not always the same thing. Because while Meghan was giving interviews, Sophie was quietly building something much more dangerous: credibility. She kept showing up, kept working, kept carrying herself with discipline while the chaos exploded around her. And for many royal watchers, that contrast slowly became impossible to unsee. Looking back now, the entire relationship between Sophie and Meghan feels less like a misunderstanding and more like a silent collision between two completely different philosophies of survival. Meghan appeared determined to challenge the institution publicly. Sophie appeared determined to survive it privately. Meghan used visibility as power. Sophie used restraint as power. Meghan told the world exactly how she felt. Sophie allegedly mastered the art of making people feel everything without directly saying it. And in the end, that may be why Sophie's quiet moments ended up haunting royal discussions far longer than anyone expected.